when we write with inspiration and conviction, but we build our thoughts before we write, so that the thoughts will be logical, will be sequential. And that's why, Mr. President, distinguished senators, actually the issue of tourism in Nigeria will deal
particularly on the basis of a PPP arrangement. Apart from Shegulola, there is a Baja Mines that is already, refining gold in my state. In addition to that, we did a lot in the area of health. It's on record that we revitalized 332 health centers in Osun State, one per ward. We have 332 wards, and we have 332 health centers, because the importance of primary health care is very, very germane. We again try as much as possible to ensure security of life and property by supporting the security agencies for their needs. I don't want to bore you with a lot of details. I think most of these things are already in my CV. But let me say I thank the Almighty God for this opportunity. And I want to thank Mr. President President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for considering me worthy of being nominated for a minister. And I thank this very important House, the Senate, for the opportunity of this screening today. Thank you and God bless you.
President, sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Adenigba Francis Fadams, OFR. Today, I represent the good people of Osun State. I'm from Osun East. I thank Mr. President for at least counting Osun State worthy of bringing one of us as a ministerial nominee. Before you is His Excellency, the former governor of Osun State, His Excellency Isiaka Oyetola, who happened to come from my school, University of Lagos. I was a year ahead of him, 77, he's 78. And he's a pioneer, one of the few pioneer students of insurance. When insurance and finance department and MASCOM was 77, insurance 78, they started it. Today, we thank Mr. President for bringing you here for scrutiny. His Excellency Mr. Oyetola is a Democrat. If I can remember with nostalgia, in Unilag in 76, he was among few of us. That was 78 when we left. He was among few of them that led the struggle against the obnoxious education of Colonel Ali policy, which led to Ali must go then. And the education policy changed to favor the student. Again, a strong lawyer, faithful ally of Mr. President, Asiwaju Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, who have been with him for long, like our leader. A financial and management and insurance guru of repute. A good manager of men and women and financial resources. Today, he brought all his he had been in business and private life for 30 years. He brought all his private life to the experience he had to bear on Osun politics, which yielded many financial opportunities and business opportunities. My distinguished colleagues, today I brought the man, at least that has performed to the best of his ability and our own admiration, for you to please kindly to please kindly, at the end of the day, approve his nomination for Mr. President to swear in. I so submit to my fellow colleagues. Thank you very much.
Okay, leader.
Mr. President of the Senate, very distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Olalere Oyewumi. I represent the wonderful people of Osun West Central District. Mr. Nominee, I want to thank my senior brother that spoke before me to congratulate you on being found worthy to be nominated by the President of Osun State as a Minister of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the man standing before us has many accolades. When our brother from Ogun State and the man from Ekiti, particularly Mr. Alake, was here, our colleague from Ekiti State described him as a Jiroba, which means the one that sees the king early in the morning. But the man standing before us here today is more than a Jiroba. He's an Abobaji. The one that sleeps with the king and wake up with him before a Jiroba comes in the morning. Because they say blood is thicker than water. Sir, in Osun State, the three of us representing Osun State in this Hello chamber have met with the executive governor of Osun State yesterday, Senator Ademola Nuruddin Jackson Adeleke. And I'm speaking on his behalf that we should give our total support for the nominee standing before you, Mr. Agboyega Isiaka Oyetola, as the next minister from Osun State. We believe in him. You know, Osun State is a young state that is yearning for development. I will believe they can come from anybody. And it's one of us, one of our leaders. I will believe that if he's here representing us, we have 3 senators here, the governor at home, if all of us work together, Osun State will be better. So I'm speaking on his behalf and on behalf of other 2 senators from Osun State that we have no objection to his nomination. And we believe that he's going to perform as you submit.
I think this is very good for Nigerian democracy. When you hear the opposing parties speaking on behalf of a nominee from the majority party, and that is why the Senate is totally different. We speak across party lines. We are not interested in party once you come here. Leader, Senator Olarode, and your colleagues from Osun, I'm very delighted to hear what you have just said. He has been your governor, he's one of you, and you have spoken on behalf of your colleagues. Hearing from the horse's mouth, I don't think we have much to discuss with this nominee. If you have anything at all to add, otherwise your people have sanctioned that you should represent them. Your governor, who is from even a different political party, has sent emissaries here. You did not even come alone. You arrive here with the new national secretary of the APC, Senator Ajibola Bashiru, and former senators and House of Rep members, all of them are there in the gallery just to support you. The entire Osun is behind you, from the governor to the smallest person. So please, if you have nothing else to add, just step forward and then pay respect to the Senate and then proceed outside.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have it there. The former governor of Osun State, Adigboyega Oyetola, being escorted out of the Senate chambers at this very moment after introducing himself in this screening exercise. Just when we were thinking that the number of nominees sent by President Tinubu was 47, that number has increased to 48 with the replacement of Dr. Miriam Shetty with Dr. Mariga Mahmood and the addition of Mr. Festus Keyamo to that list, bringing the number of ministerial nominees who are to be screened by the Senate to 48, and that just happened earlier this morning, that announcement from the Senate President following the opening of a letter that he was given, a letter from President Bola Tinubu. And we're seeing the next nominee making his way up to the podium. Of course, before that, we heard the former governor of Osun State, Adigboyega Oyetola, talking about his background in insurance, 30 years in the private sector, and his time as governor from 2018 to 2022. The ministerial screening of ministerial nominees from President Bola Tinubu is in session right here at the Senate chambers, live on Channels Television, and we will be giving you all the details as they unfold.
Even currently, you just left your seat there, so we want to use this opportunity to thank Mr. President for recognizing our colleagues and then finding them worthy to also cross over to the Federal Executive Council to serve the country. You have anything you'd like to add? Otherwise, you greet your colleagues and in line with the act, which I just read out, Cap 208, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, privileges and enjoyed by members. Cap 208, Laws of the Federation of Nigeria, privileges and enjoyed by members of the Senate and the legislature. You do the needful.
I can introduce myself now. My name is Senator Ibrahim Gaidam. I was born in Bukarti village, former Gaidam local government, on 15 September 1956. I went to Unusari Primary School for my primary education from 1963 to 1969. I proceeded to Borno Teachers College for my grade 2 certificate. I completed the Teachers College in the year 1979. Thereafter, I was posted as a primary school teacher. I taught for some 2-3 years before proceeding to Ahmadu Bello University for my diploma in accounting certificate. I completed the diploma certificate, the diploma course in 1983. I went back to Borno State and employed as an audit officer with my diploma certificate. I worked there for about 3-4 years. I went back to Ahmadu Bello University to pursue my degree certificate in accounting. I completed in 1990. I then went back to Borno State. I was posted to the governor's office as an accountant before Yobe was created in 1991. We were all deployed to Yobe State. I was an accountant, assistant director finance, principal accountant, up to director finance and supplies in various ministries in Yobe State. I was appointed commissioner and posted to the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Social Development in 1995. In 1996, I was posted to Ministry of Commerce and Industry in Yobe State. I led my office as Director of Finance and Supply. In those days, if you are working as a civil servant or public officer, you will be allowed to go on study leave without pay. So I left my office as Director, Finance and Supply, and then got appointed Commissioner. After dissolution of the cabinet in 1997, I went back to Ministry of Finance as Deputy Accountant General stroke Director Final Accounts. I was there then in 1998. I was deployed to Ministry of Health as Director Finance and Supplies. In 1999, when civilian administration came in, I was appointed permanent secretary. The position I held up to February 2007 when I retired and joined politics. I ran with my boss, late Senator Momali. I was his running mate. I was his running mate. So we won the election and I was his deputy for about 20 months. Thereafter, my boss died and I was sworn in as the governor of Yobe State on 27th January 2009. So I completed his tenure. In 2011, I contested and won election, and I became the executive governor of Yobe State. Also in 2015, I contested and won, and became executive governor of Yobe State for a second time. And in 2019, after expiration of my tenure, 2 terms, I contested for senatorial seats in Yobe East. I won. I came to this Hado chamber, and the same thing applied in 2023. And this is why I am now. Thank you.
Thank you. I think at that time, the constitution was not amended. That if an incumbent dies and the deputy takes over, the deputy will only be entitled to 1 tenure. So he enjoyed that privilege of going for a clear 8 years plus the unexpired residue of his late principal. May the soul of his late principal rest in peace. Distinguished Senator, Nigerians know you more. You may step forward and enjoy your privilege. Distinguished colleagues, we have the distinguished Senator Aliu Sabi Abdullahi. I'm sure a lot of you are itching to ask him questions. Distinguished Senator Sabi, you're welcome. If there is anything that has changed in your life between the 9th Senate and the 10th Senate, you may go ahead and let us know. Otherwise, you move forward and take your privilege.
Order. Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, distinguished Senator Godswill Akpabio, the Deputy Senate President, my own brother, a friend, a confidant, distinguished Senator Barrow I. Jibrin, the Leader of the Senate, all other principal officers, my very distinguished senators of the 10th Senate, let me say to all Mr. President, sir, I have indeed very, Mr. President, distinguished senators, I am Aliu Sabi Abdullahi, CON, Baradin Borgu, and it is with so much nostalgia that I stand here before you as a ministerial nominee of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu, GCFR, and of course, standing before you here gives me so much joy, knowing fully well that the 10th Senate has already begun to perform that very great national duty that the Senate has always been known to perform. Mr. President, my CV is before you, but let me say very briefly, I'm a veterinarian by training, and I've had 20 years of public service experience before I voluntarily retired to contest in the 2015 election to be a member of the 8th Senate, during which time I served as a spokesman, and I was re-elected in 2019, during which time in the 9th Senate, I was the Deputy Chief Whip of the Senate. Mr. President, I know for want of time and for the fact that a lot has to happen today, I would definitely want to stop at this level and to say thank you very much for the privilege to be here. And I must give my thanks to President Ahmed Bola Tinubu for finding me worthy of his nomination. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Yeah, distinguished Senator Sabi Abdullahi, you are aware of Order 9, Sub A. Privileges are the rights enjoyed by the Senate collectively and by the members of the Senate individually, conferred by the Legislative Houses, Powers and Privileges Act, Cap. 208, Laws of the Federation, 1990, and other statutes, or by practice, precedents, usage, and customs. It's important that the public do know that what we are doing here, when it comes to your case and other cases similar to yours, are enshrined in our laws and laws of the Federation of Nigeria, and also enshrined in our rules. Distinguished Senator, we want to thank Mr. President again for finding us worthy to serve in his cabinet. And we are doing so on your behalf. You may wish to step forward and take a bow. Assalamu alaikum. Yes, Leader of the Senate. Who is the next nominee? Yes, distinguished colleagues, because Senator Hennekin Lukwebri is already here and he enjoys the same privilege as others, we may just give him 1 minute to mention anything that he wishes Nigerians to know, and then after he will take a bow.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the President of the Senate and Chairman of the National Assembly, Your Excellency, the Deputy President of the Senate, the Senate leadership, distinguished senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Mr. President, may I very humbly crave indulgence to acknowledge my 3 senators from Bayelsa, starting with Senator Dixon, who is representing me from Bayelsa West, Senator Benson Agaraga, and then Senator Benson Kombe. Your Excellency, my CV is already before you, and I don't intend to bore you with the details of what is contained in my CV. I had the rare privilege of becoming Speaker of Bayelsa State House of Assembly. I also had the rare privilege of being here for 8 years. And thereafter, I also had the privilege of being screened by the Senate and confirmed to be a minister between 2015 and 2019. Your Excellency, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear before you. And let me also seize the opportunity to also express my gratitude to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for finding me worthy to be part of his cabinet. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Well, the distinguished Senator Hennekin Lukwebri, you just mentioned you were already a speaker. You mentioned that you were a senator for 8 years, and you are still a senator anyway, but non-serving. You mentioned that you were screened by this hallowed chamber, and you serve as a minister of the Federal Republic. And you also mentioned the fact that you have also been renominated by Mr. President. Again, on behalf of the 10th Senate, we want to thank the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria for finding our colleagues worthy to serve the nation in the Federal Executive Council. You may now take a bow. Leader of the Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, sitting as chair, distinguished colleagues, it's a Friday, and to enable our distinguished colleagues observe the Jumat prayer, may I move that we go on a break and resume our sitting by 2:30 p.m. I so move, Mr. President, Mr. Chair.
The Minority Leader.
The President of the Senate, distinguished colleagues, I stand to second the motion moved by the Leader of the House as a second. Leader of the Senate. Yes.
Distinguished colleagues, today is Friday, and most of our colleagues have already stepped out to observe prayers. So we
Greetings, viewers around the globe. Welcome to your favorite channel, Opitan Global Media. My name is Bolanle Ajulo, and here with me in the studio,
my name is Oluwatoyin Coker. Greetings to viewers worldwide. Thank you for rejoining us as we bring you the latest news update at this hour. Here are the world news headlines. Dmitry Medvedev, Vladimir Putin's close associate, issued a strong warning to Ukraine and NATO allies, asserting Russia's determination to overcome its adversaries. Medvedev claimed that Russia is confronting NATO in an almost open confrontation and assured that Russia's strength would enable the achievement of its military goals. He drew parallels to Russia's actions in August 2008 when Moscow supported breakaway regions in Georgia.
Climate activist Greta Thunberg announced that she will not participate in the upcoming Edinburgh International Book Festival, scheduled to begin on August 12th. Thunberg cited her refusal to be associated with events linked to the fossil fuel industry. She specifically criticized Baillie Gifford, the main sponsor of the festival, accusing the UK-based investment management firm of greenwashing. Greenwashing is the term used to describe a situation where companies or organizations portray themselves as environmentally responsible through their marketing efforts. Yet in reality, they fall short of meeting the actual environmental standards they claim to uphold.
News from the U.S. In a recent announcement on his Truth Social platform, former President Donald Trump criticized Department of Justice Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, who has brought federal indictments against him since June. Trump claimed that Smith's involvement with a judge he referred to as his dream pick raised concerns about bias and the need for recusal. Trump is aiming to protect his First Amendment rights, alleging that Smith's actions might infringe upon them. This comes in response to court filings seeking a protective order against Trump's potential disclosure of government information during pretrial discovery.
In a bizarre interview, CNN's Dana Bash couldn't hold back her laughter after attorney John Lauro, defending Donald Trump against election conspiracy charges, claimed there was a peaceful transfer of power after the 2020 election. Lauro's assertion was met with skepticism from Bash, who engaged in a tense interview with him. Lauro denied allegations of election lies, attributing Trump's actions to free speech and his efforts to pressure election officials.
Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie expressed concerns about Donald Trump's close associate, Mark Meadows, from Trump's final year in office. Christie speculated that Meadows may already be cooperating with authorities, noting his behavior suggestive of a cooperating witness. Meadows was a heavily involved chief of staff during that period and turned over numerous text messages to the special counsel.
In Lagos, Nigeria, in a shocking incident in Lagos State's Ketu area, a mob brutally attacked an unidentified policeman after a man named Yusuf was involved in a collision with a BRT bus. Eyewitnesses reported that the police were allegedly trying to seize Yusuf's vehicle, causing him to be pushed into the BRT lane. Tragically, an incoming BRT bus collided with him, leading to his collapse and injuries. Witnesses hold the policemen responsible for Yusuf's ordeal, stating that their actions led to the unfortunate incident. As reported by Punch News, an eyewitness, who does not want her name mentioned, said the policemen were responsible for Yusuf's ordeal, adding that he sustained varying degrees of injury as a result of the incident. The policemen caused this. They were the ones that were trying to dispossess the man of his vehicle, and while trying to push the man out of the vehicle, they pushed him on the BRT lane, and an incoming bus ran into the man, the eyewitness said.
President of the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, Comrade Joe Ajero, disclosed that President Bola Tinubu expressed his commitment to cost-saving measures by residing in a two-bedroom apartment. Ajero made this revelation during an interview with Channels TV's Politics Today.
In a surprising turn of events, the Nigerian Senate failed to confirm the former governor of Kaduna State, Malam Nasir El-Rufai, among 3 nominees who did not pass security checks. This comes as part of the confirmation process for ministerial nominees forwarded by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The Senate's decision follows the confirmation of 45 out of 48 nominees. During a recent appearance on Channels Television's Sunrise Daily program, Senate spokesperson Yemi Adaramodu, who represents the Ekiti South Senatorial District, indicated that the Senate is considering the possibility of re-inviting the 3 ministerial nominees who have not yet been confirmed following their initial screening.
The All Progressives Congress, APC, has cautioned Edo State Governor Godwin Obaseki against inciting the public against President Bola Tinubu's administration. The party accused Obaseki of attributing the state's poor road conditions to the federal government, alleging that he aimed to shift the blame for his perceived incompetence onto the new administration of President Tinubu.
The Nigerian federal government has retracted the contempt charge against the Nigeria Labour Congress, NLC, Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, TUC, and their leaders. This move comes shortly before the expiration of the NLC's ultimatum for the government to withdraw the contempt summons or face an indefinite nationwide strike. The Ministry of Justice emphasized the need to maintain court orders and prevent disruptions to public facilities.
Niger Junta has taken a surprising step by appointing economist Ali Mahamani Lamine Zaina as the transitional prime minister. This decision comes over a week after a military coup led to the ousting of President Mohamed Bazoum. The junta, referred to as the National Council for the Safeguarding of the Country, announced the appointment through a televised decree. Zaine's role will involve leading discussions for the formation of a new government. Amid this development, the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, plans to hold an emergency summit to address the political crisis in Niger as military leaders continue to hold power against ECOWAS's ultimatum.
In a significant development, a high-ranking U.S. official engaged in direct discussions with the military leadership of Niger in the aftermath of last month's coup. The U.S. administration has underscored its stance that a diplomatic resolution is still attainable for addressing the coup, aiming for the restoration of President Mohamed Bazoum. In the interim, however, financial assistance has been temporarily withheld.
As events continue to unfolding developments in West Africa, last Sunday, West African leaders set a deadline of 1 week for the coup leaders to comply with their demands, warning that they would take all necessary measures, including the use of force. However, in Nigeria, which is likely to contribute a significant portion of the troops if military action is taken, there is growing opposition to involving the military in the situation. Nigeria shares close ethnic and historical ties with Niger, and voices against military intervention are becoming more pronounced. Nigeria's Senate recently urged the government to explore political and diplomatic solutions instead. The tension is palpable as the deadline approaches, and the international community closely watches how the situation will unfold.
Judgment is around the corner, and anxiety of Nigerians await presidential election petition verdict. In the upcoming week, Nigerians eagerly await the verdict of the Presidential Election Petition Court, PEPC, on the contentious 2023 presidential election. The court's decision will have significant implications for Nigeria's political growth and the consolidation of democracy. With the widespread influence of social media, this election petition has become one of the most closely followed in the country's history. As President Tinubu faces off against his adversaries, the outcome holds immense importance. The involved parties, including Alhaji Abubakar Atiku and his party, the People's Democratic Party (PDP), along with Mr. Peter Obi and the Labour Party, are challenging the results of the February 25th presidential election at the PEPC. The court, led by Justice Haruna Tsamani, now holds the responsibility of making a decision that could either make history or lead to disappointment, as emphasized by Mr. Emmanuel Ogebe, a United States-based human rights lawyer.
In the world stage, China faces mounting criticism on Monday after it blocked and used water cannons against a key U.S. allies' vessels in the disputed South China Sea, escalating tensions in the crucial waterway. In response to the weekend confrontation, the Philippine government summoned Beijing's ambassador and lodged a diplomatic protest, while the U.S. reiterated its commitment to defend its ally if under attack. China defended its actions, citing the violation of its sovereignty by the Philippines. Manila released video footage of the incident, intensifying regional tensions over conflicting territorial claims in the area, which has become a growing point of contention between the U.S. and China.
Niger-renowned human rights lawyer Femi Falana warns ECOWAS seek UN Security Council approval before intervening in Niger Republic. The timely warning comes amid a one-week ultimatum issued by the President Bola Tinubu, led ECOWAS to the military junta in Niger, demanding the immediate release and reinstatement of Niger's elected president, Mohamed Bazoum. The captured Niger's president has been detained by the military for over 10 days. The German government issues a stern warning to the Niger coup plotters, cautioning against any acts of violence towards detained President Mohamed Bazoum. A spokesperson for the Foreign Office expresses deep concern for the politician's safety, as conveyed in Berlin on Monday.
In a recent statement, the former Minister of Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Fashola-san, vehemently refutes false allegations of involvement in drafting the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal (PEPT) judgment. Denouncing the spread of this defamatory claim on social media, Fashola expresses his disappointment, as confirmed by his special advisor, Media, Hakeem Bello. Addressing the allegation, Fashola categorically refutes the claims, stating he has been out of Abuja for an extended period, rendering the accusations baseless. He strongly condemns those responsible for spreading these dangerous allegations, branding them as agents of destabilization.
Ukraine's security service, the SBU, has reported the arrest of a woman in connection with a Russian conspiracy to assassinate President Volodymyr Zelensky. According to the SBU statement, the woman was apprehended while attempting to obtain the president's itinerary ahead of his visit to the flood-affected region of Mykolaiv in June. The SBU has consistently accused local residents sympathetic to Russia of providing valuable information to aid Moscow's military activities. President Zelensky confirmed being informed about the arrest and expressed his support for the SBU's efforts in countering traitorous activities. As of now, Russia has not issued any official statement regarding the arrest or the alleged assassination plot. The SBU claims the woman was caught red-handed trying to pass intelligence to Russian operatives, indicating a serious and potentially dangerous security breach.
Celebrity news. Veteran actor Pete Edochie opens up about polygamy, embracing second marriage without condemnation, he said. Rewrite for headlines. In his words, the people who take second wives know best why they take second wives. I don't have any need for a second wife. For me, I have a wife who has given me 5 sons. What am I going to look for a second wife for? No, it's not necessary. I will not condemn polygamy, no, because people have their reasons for what they do, right?
In the Senate. In a recent development, Festus Keyamo Esan, the ministerial nominee from Delta State, has issued an apology to the Senate for his failure to appear before the 9th National Assembly during his tenure as Minister of State for Labor and Productivity under former President Muhammadu Buhari. Senate screening quickly went in flames as soon as the controversial lawyer stepped onto the podium. As the Senate now has confirmed Festus Keyamo, Dr. Tihani and others, President Tinubu is now faced with a crucial decision to properly kickstart his administration with cabinets in place, regardless of any pending judicial decisions that could potentially impact his tenure.
Sports news. England advances to the Women's World Cup quarterfinals, narrowly defeating Nigeria 4-2 on penalties in Brisbane, despite playing with 10 players after Lauren James's red card. The European champions face the challenge of improving their game to vie for the World Cup alongside their European crown. In the upcoming quarterfinals, they will take on the winner between Colombia and Jamaica, while acknowledging Nigeria's impressive performance in this tournament, proving they are a force to be reckoned with.
Well, Oluwatoyin, it's truly an honor as always to share Opitan Newsroom moment with you. I'm eagerly anticipating the chance to team up once more tomorrow.
Bolanle, the pleasure of being here is always mine. Your presence makes these broadcasts all the more enjoyable.
And that brings us to the end of our news headlines. Thanks for watching us here at Opitan Global Media from our New York studio. Don't forget to stay connected with us on all your social media platforms. Be sure to follow us, like our videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and hit notification bell so you never miss out on the latest updates and breaking news. On that
We resume at 2:30 prompt, 2:30 prompt, 2:30 p.m. prompt.
How whether I have conducted any research on that. Yes. I've conducted several researches on water harvesting and reuse. One, we look at harvesting water from different sources. We have different sources of water harvesting. One, we harvest water from rainfall. We harvest water from water that comes, the wastewater that comes out of our homes or different sources, and we treat it for reuse. Why are we doing this? Water is life, and water, we don't encourage wastage of water. So what we now do is that the water that, the runoff that comes, that will cause flooding,
or that will cause nuisance to the environment, to the society, we put it into use by one, treating it, two, by reusing it. The water that we harvest from rainfall, it is give it further treatment. It can either be used in that state for different purposes. For example, if you want to use it for irrigation, you can use it direct without treatment. But if you want to use it for maybe for in case in drinking or cooking, you treat it further to avert that other bacteria or other viruses that will be find themselves in the water. For example, now the wastewater that comes out of our toilets or other waste sources, we treat it, we collect it, we treat it, and we now channel it into irrigation or other purposes like washing of roads. If you go to other Western countries, roads are being washed. We use such water for washing of cars and other things that are not to be, maybe for example now, you cannot use such water for drinking. If you want to use it for drinking, that means you have to suggest it to further treatment. We have different levels of treatment. We have the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary level of treatment. So for economic purpose, if you want to reuse water that comes out of your waste sources, you just suggest it to primary treatment. Primary treatment is where you maybe through filtration and a little touch of bacterial removers. Then you use it for irrigation because some of the materials that are there that are helpful for our crops. So we suggest it to only primary treatment so that we can reuse it. But for example, now if we want to use this water for drinking or other purposes, you have to suggest it for further treatment. So that is what we have been doing over time. So there are several researches that we have conducted. I think my CVs is there. If you can look at it, you can see some of the researches that we have conducted. Then the second question that talks about my biodata. Yes, I went to primary school in the year 1984. The year 1989 was when I got my first living certificate. And the last listing is the years. Pardon? I started in 1984, 1984, 1985, 1986, 1984, 1985, 1986. Pardon? 1984, 1985, 1986, 1987, 1988, and 1989. That was when I passed out with first school living certificate. Primary school. I'm talking about primary school. Then I further my secondary school in 1990. Yes, secondary school in 1990. 1990, 1991, 92, 93, 94, 95. That is when I got my SSCE. That's when I got my SSCE. Then I graduated in 2004. Yes, what happens that I was actually supposed to pass out in 2003, but there was a prolonged strike. If you can remember, there was a prolonged strike by ASU. Then I did a 5-year program in engineering, which I was supposed to stay there for 5 years. But because of the prolonged strike, I spent 6 years for the program. That is why I graduated in 2004.
Prof, the question was, you were born in 1980, and you had your first school living certificate in 1989. That means that at the period you should have been in nursery school, at the age of 4 years, you were already in primary 1. You were already in primary 1. Which state was this? Well, so the nominee was born in 1980, and the nominee graduated with first school living certificate in 1989. So the nominee is exceptionally brilliant. The nominee was 3 years old when he started his primary education, and he proceeded to do 6 years. He proceeded to do, the nominee started his primary education at the age of 3 and was able to finish 6 years later in 1989. And it's possible that the nominee was a classmate of Senator Abamoro. So let's hear from Senator Abamoro whether he also started his own primary school at the age of 3.
Sir? And I want to believe that standards that are applied to nominees that appear before this hallowed chamber will also apply to Professor Ussel. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, looking at the resume that we have of Professor Ussel, I think ordinarily that the discrepancies that you find in the times enumerated here may necessarily have come from typographical errors, which Professor Ussel himself, which he can explain. So I want to say at this point, therefore, that records don't lie. Records don't lie. And if you look at what we have here about qualifications and the explanations he has given, I think we must be prepared to give him the benefit of doubt. And so, my distinguished colleagues, I want to say that at this point, that Professor Ussel has sufficiently explained himself and the records are there to show. But I have a point that I want to make here, Mr. President. In your answer to the point of order raised by our colleagues earlier, without prejudice to my support for Professor Ussel, I want to say that I come from a part of Benue State that is a minority. I want to say, therefore, that while I'm appealing to my colleagues to approve the nomination, to confirm the nomination of Professor Ussel, that looking at the configuration of our system and in ruling on the point of order, constitutional point of order that was raised, you indicated that Mr. President is going to bring more names. I want to say, therefore, and place it on record, that in bringing more names, especially from Benue State, that a name that will come should come from the Benue South Senatorial District to complement our effort at creating unity in Nigeria. Thank you very much, Mr. President, for allowing me to make this comment.
Distinguished colleagues, we have a lot of nominees to take today. So we will like Prof, because I mean, as a professor, to go and take a look at his certificates. And you were not his classmate now. So you were not his classmate. Is a Prof should look in case there are typographical errors.
Mr. President, point of order. Mr. President, point of order.
Equip it. So it is not abandoned. It's not abandoned. And this question should not be directed to the nominee. If you permit me, I would want to ask relevant questions.
Yola will give judgment in the Federal High Court in Yola on the same matter. Another one in Port Harcourt will give a different judgment on the same matter. Another one in Warri will give judgment on the same matter. Another one in Kano will give judgment on the same matter. If God gives you the office of the Attorney General of the Federation, how will it bring sanity to bear? Because it tends to make people to lose confidence in the judicial system. That's number one, because I think something should be done where there should be judicial precedence. If there is already a judgment on a particular matter, we don't see How, in fact, in some instances, we have seen where the High Court sets aside Supreme Court decisions by virtue of their decisions. Supreme Court has decided something on a matter, and then somebody will go to High Court, and High Court will decide something totally different without looking at the precedent already set by the Supreme Court. Don't you think that, how will you, if you have the opportunity, work hard to bring discipline and sanity to bear? That's one question. The other one is, most of the boundary crises you refer to linear problems that were caused by the creation of states. And local governments. Abia too. You have some villages in Akwa Ibom that were cut out of in the local government and placed in Aujut or Carlos in Bende or something in the next local government. So those village sheds are confused whether to attend traditional institution in India. So that kind of boundary situation created from state creation, they exist in various parts of the country. Those things are very difficult unless you revisit the boundaries, the state creation act itself. You understand? So it's not something that one state governor can do. But as an Attorney General, what will be your advice? But you have more problems if we were to take you. We can't finish you in one day. Because, to be very honest, we would like continuous interaction with you, even after the appointment, assuming you become the Attorney General of the Federation, because the issues are legion. Just proceed, answer to just those two issues, where judges of coordinate jurisdictions give divergent put their judgment on the same matter. What will you advise? And then, of course, perennial crisis of boundary disputes caused as a result of state creation and not the fault of the states themselves. What would you do in those two regards? Bearing in mind that some of these states were created in 1967 and they have been existing, and we have had attorney generals. So don't say that state governors should have. It means that they have failed, and this is your turn. What will you do differently?
Thank you, sir. I'll crave your indulgence to start from the second question on the issue of boundary dispute. I will say that this is not a legal matter. Rather, it is a political matter. I know that a number of factors influence the creation of states, local government, and all that. The chief among them are, one, the willingness of this community to live together, then social.
We are here to agitate for our people. Our parents are suffering. The nation is going at that cripple of economy.
We have met this man severally. Mr. Ejua has done everything to boycott us. He has done everything to deprive us of our rights. We want this man to do the needful.
We don't have roads. We don't have anything to say. Our jobs has already been taken away from us. My own personal community has already been lifted by the city caution. So also Ayatollah is going in a decision. There's no Bagila, there's nothing.
The Agri student issued an ultimatum to the government and the Ondo State Oil Producing Areas Development Commission, also PADEC, to do the needful.
Do the needful. We give them 2 weeks to do that, and we are giving and we are giving the Akata General 7 days.
The students threaten to stage more protests across the state until the situation is addressed.
But this forum shopping, I know is still there. 3 people are involved. 1, the judge, 2, the lawyer, and the litigant. But you discover that most of the cases are political cases. They are political cases. Very few are non-political cases. On the part of the lawyers involved, I know that the long arm of the law, through the Legal Practitioners Disciplinary Committee, the body of benchers, will catch up with them if appropriate reports are made or they are brought to the attention of these authorities. For the litigants, well, there's very little we can do, but they can also be sanctioned. I will advise that 1, we make full disclosure when we are approaching the lawyer to file a case. Because the lawyer is not a wizard, he's not a witch. He won't know whether any judgment, any action has been commenced elsewhere. But by and large, I think we need proper reporting system of court judgment, especially where you have Federal High Court. We can, I think that can be sorted out, bringing it to the attention of the judge where it is known. It is not only here. For instance, there was a matter, well, let me avoid, because it's one of the matters that are sub judice. We know that it happens, it's occurring. How do we do it? Everybody has to call him or herself to order. For the lawyers, I have mentioned that the power of discipline of the Legal Practitioners Disciplinary Committee will catch up. The judge can also make recommendations towards the discipline of the judge. They are also of the lawyer. Then for the judge, the NJC will issue its power of discipline. But what we discover is that when this type of case comes up, the man who reported will now come when it is time to hear the matter and say that he's withdrawing his action. And if a man says he's withdrawing his complaint, there is very little for anybody to do in the circumstances. So these are my takes on the issue, sir. But for the Attorney General, his interaction with the National Assembly, with the judiciary is continuous. He has to answer as often as is needed, and on a humorous note, at no charge.
Well, you are used to giving advice without charges. So, let me thank the nominee, the Lenin Silk, Latif Wagbemi, SAN, for the elucidating answers to most of the questions, and then to also let you know that so many hands are still up waiting for you, but we can't keep you beyond this period now. So our intention will be that we will collect some of the concerns of the distinguished senators, and then the Senate leader will definitely present them to you, so that if God gives you the office of the Attorney General of the Federation, then you will also use those questions as working documents. Thank you for coming. You may now take leave of the Senate.
After an intense session there, Mr. Latif Fagbemi, SAN, makes his way out of the Senate chambers, bringing a number of nominees who have been screened by the Senate to 26. I remember President Tinubu had sent a list of 28 names. 26 of those names have been screened, and we're hoping to see who comes in next for the screening process. I remember, if you're just tuning in, earlier we saw the Chief of Staff to President Tinubu make his way into this chamber with an envelope which he handed over to the Senate President. Speculations are that that envelope will be holding the names of more nominees from the President. The screening process is still live here on Channels Television at the Senate chambers of the National Assembly in Abuja.
Next nominee, please. Distinguished colleagues, before us is Professor Ali Pate. Prof, you were long awaited. We've seen your resume, so we'd like you to give us a summarized version of your resume and add anything that you think you would like the Nigerian public and this hallowed chamber to know about you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, Your Excellency, the Deputy Senate President, leadership of the Senate, distinguished senators in these hallowed chambers, if I may call out my own distinguished senators from Bauchi State, my brothers, distinguished Senator Shehu Buba, Senator Abdul Ningi, and Senator Dr. Samaila Kaila, Patel and Katagum. Good afternoon. It is with all humility that I stand before you this afternoon as a nominee to be minister in the Federal Executive Council. My name is Muhammad Ali Pate, and I was born on September 6, 1968. I'm very grateful that His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, graciously invited me and nominated me to be considered by this chamber for confirmation. It's a high honor that I'll be forever grateful to him for. I come from the village of Mainari in Misau local government area of Bauchi State. I attended my primary school at the Bakaro Primary School in Bauchi local government. And 73 to 79, I went on to Barea College Zaria from 1979 to 1984 for my secondary education. In 1984, I went to Ahmadu Bello University to do my advanced levels and then went on to medical school. I graduated from Ahmadu Bello University with my medical doctor degrees in 1990. After housemanship and national youth service, I went back to the Ahmadu Bello University Teaching Hospital as an assistant lecturer. I was very honored to have been recruited to work for the British Medical Research Council laboratories in the Gambia. where I started my international health career in February 1993. So it's 30 years now in international public health career. With the Medical Research Council, we did work on malaria, on malnutrition, on many other childhood diseases in those days. I went on to the United States to specialize in internal medicine and subsequently subspecialized in infectious diseases and was board certified by the American Board of Internal Medicine and Infectious Diseases as a physician who was also licensed in the United States. I studied health systems and pivoted to the World Bank as a development professional in 2000. At the World Bank, as a young professional at the World Bank and public health specialist, I worked in Eastern and Southern Africa on health reforms, HIV/AIDS, several countries in the region. I also worked in the District of Columbia in their own health reforms in the United States, seconded by the World Bank. I moved on to be senior health specialist and human development sector coordinator in the East Asia and Pacific region of the World Bank, where I was responsible for Papua New Guinea, Timor-Leste, Solomon Island, and many Pacific Island countries, based in Sydney, but covering the region. In 2008, I was acting sector manager for health and nutrition and population in the East Asia Pacific, when the late President Umar Musa Yar'Adua, God bless his soul, invited me to come home and serve. I did not hesitate to come back and serve. I came on to be the chief executive of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, and that was the beginning of a 5-year journey in the federal government. After 3 years, I was asked by His Excellency President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan to serve in his government, which I did. And in the 5 years that I served in government, we contributed, along with several faces that I see here and outside in this country, important things for this country. Polio was a major challenge globally, and Nigeria was at the heart of it. With all of you, with several other state governors, we were able to deal with decisively. We improved immunization. We developed the midwifery service scheme, developed a community health worker program, started to revitalize primary health care. President Jonathan asked me to be his nominee as the Minister of State in the Federal Ministry of Health. And this hallowed chambers confirmed me in July of 2011. I served until 2013, when I completed all that I had promised my president at that time, and moved on to teach comparative health systems at the Duke University Global Health Institute in Durham, North Carolina in 2013. I did that for 2 years until I became the Chief Executive Officer of Big Win Philanthropy, which is a UK and US-based philanthropy that was helping leaders in the continent of Africa who were interested in investing in human capital, who were interested in investing for the long-term growth of their countries. Following that stint of work, in July 2019, I was honored that the Harvard University assessed me and endowed a chair, the Julio Frank Chair Professorship in the Practice of Public Health Leadership in Boston, and took the unprecedented step of seconding me to serve as the Global Director for Health, Nutrition, and Population at the World Bank. I was Director of the Global Financing Facility through the period of the initial stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we contributed to several countries. Most recently, I was elected member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and in fact, I was due to start my role as Chief Executive Officer of the Global Alliance for Vaccines Initiative in Geneva, Switzerland, tomorrow, August 3rd. His Excellency, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I think has inspired this country. I think there's an opportunity to renew hope, to heal the country, to unite it, and to inspire it. When asked to come and contribute in my own country, I accepted, and I'm very grateful that you are giving me this privilege of standing before you. As a person, I've been married for the last 28 years to a wonderful woman who has been very tolerant of me, and we have 6 children, 4 girls and 2 boys. And the community that I come from has been very gracious in naming me the Chigari of Misau, which is my traditional title in my own village, and the Enya of Ibi in Taraba State, in addition to other community leadership roles that I have had. I've also supported an organization that is a grassroots-based organization in this country for the last 8 years. It's operating in 19 states and the Federal Capital Territory, and it works with frontline community leaders. We've got 70,000 of them that have been trained through this organization that I have been supporting over time. So, Your Excellency, Mr. President, I'm here, humbly, standing before you, and ready to answer any questions that may be raised by members of this chamber. Thank you very much.
Distinguished Senator Abdul Dingi, on behalf of the good people of Bauchi State.
Mr. President, my name is Abdul Ningi, and I represent Bauchi Central, Bauchi State, and the nominee is my constituent. Mr. President, I have known the nominee all his life. I school in Misau, where he comes from, and his father was actually the reason why I studied in ABU's area. And his uncle, Wakil Audu, is a very close associate of myself. Mr. President, here you have one of our very best, not only in Bauchi State, but in Nigeria. This is standing before you, it's a global personality. We used to call him the star of our time. You have listened to him, and you have also perused through some of his resume. And Mr. President, let me, from the onset again, congratulate him and thank in abundance President Bola Tinubu for appointing people like him. Being a global player, he is not taking away from our nation. Rather, he's bringing in, just as he brought in a lot of goodies when he was the Minister of Health. Mr. President, you recall, as soon as the Senate read out the list of ministerial appointees, and if you have been watching the social media and the electronic media, from Arise to TVC to NTA to AIT to channels, every participant that comes before the channel names him as a minister to watch out for. That is because of his pedigree. I have no doubt Professor Pate has come to add value to our nation. Mr. President, even though you say I should speak for Bauchi, I will crave the indulgence of my colleagues, and of course the leave of the Senate President, to allow my 2 colleagues to say a word or two, particularly Dr. Kachala, who happens also to be a medical personnel and also served under the professor. Distinguished senators, here you have a brother, somebody that can be relied upon to deliver democratic dividends, most especially in health. We are backward, but his dream all the time is to see that Nigeria belongs to the Community of Nations that will one day serve all our health requirements here, not to travel outside. I'm sure with Professor Patti given the opportunity in the next 4 years, you begin to see Nigerians look inwards rather than outwards for the health requirement. Gentlemen, Professor Ali Fati for you. Thank you.
Dr. Kachala.
Mr. President, my name is Dr. Samaila Dahua Kaila. Kachallan Katagum is my title. I'm a medical doctor, as my brother said. Actually, I'm a newcomer to the legislature. And when I came, I actually promised myself that I am going to at least stay for 2 or 3 months without saying anything in this chamber, just learning. But of course, until if the president called me to do so, thank God he didn't. But today I have to break my silence and at least talk about Professor Fati. To be honest, in fact, I am in this chamber thanks to Professor Fati. I was working in Kano when Professor Fati called me and he said he wanted to talk to me. I said, okay. He now advised me to join politics. I was shocked because at that time I actually dreaded politics. But he said, no, join politics and you'll be a good politician. This is about 6 years ago, and a lot has happened. The rest is history. Today, I'm a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and Professor Fati is here standing to be confirmed by one of his boys. The only thing I can say, I thank God. What my brother Abdul Lingi didn't say about Professor Fati is the fact that he's not only a technocrat, he is a grassroots politician. It is very difficult to have this type of combination. But go to Bauchi State, call 3 politicians, Dr. Fati will be one of them. So he is not only a technocrat, he is a politician. I'm not going to talk about him because his resume is here. It's very, very intimidating, especially for us, the medical doctors. But I will only say, for those of us that are going to work with him, engage with him for the next 4 years, hopefully, this gentleman is very honest, but he is very, 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 let me call it thorough, and I put the word here, very passionate about whatever he is doing. So if you are talking to him, whatever he told you, he meant it. He will not tell you what he doesn't mean. I will also crave the indulgence of my colleagues to ask him as many questions as possible, but on health. I'm not going to open the Commissioner of Health in Bauchi State. And one of the things that I found is the heavy, let me call it, overdependence on donations and donors in our health systems, especially the immunization side. We heavily depend on donors. You remove World Health Organization, you remove USAID, you remove Dangote and Bill Belinda Gates Foundation, there will be no immunization in Nigeria. This is a fact. If given the opportunity to serve as Minister of Health, what are you going to do to transition Nigeria from a dependent on donor to a more domestic financing of our childhood immunizations. Bearing in mind that health does not even come under exclusive list of our legislation. In fact, it is not even in the concurrent list. I think it came, if I'm not mistaken, it came in the residual. So there will be a lot of conflict in enacting laws that will be universal or at least nationwide when it comes to health. How do you intend to navigate this confusion in order for us to be more dependent, more reliant on our economy, or more reliant on our local resources for vaccines, vaccination, and even vaccine production? Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
The dismissed Senator Issa Jibrin.
Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, my distinguished colleagues, I am Issa Jibrin, representing the very good people of Kogi East. First, I want to congratulate the Prof for this nomination, very well deserved. I'm happy that the Prof served under President Yaradua, because the issue that I want to bring up has to do with one of the projects that was initiated by the wife of the president then, but has since remained abandoned. The cancer project along the airport road, Abuja. I know you are very much aware of that project. You know the havoc that cancer has wreaked on so many families in Nigeria, especially within the women fold. Especially among the women fold. Okay? Yeah, among the women fold. So what I'm saying is this. Why has that project been abandoned? That project, so many corporate bodies, including where I was working, as I was an executive director at AfriBank then, and we contributed 2 billion, okay, as part of our corporate social responsibilities to that project. We paid the money, okay, and that project has remained abandoned. I'm also happy that the minister for FCT then, well, just hold it, sir. Just hold it, sir. Hold it, sir. Hold it, sir. Your Excellency, can I continue, please? Hold on, sir. Hold on, sir. Hold on, sir. Yes, I know. The minister for FCT then is seated here. Okay, but what I'm saying is that my organization, my bank, contributed 2 billion to that project. That project has since been abandoned. I don't really know why it has been abandoned. The structures are on the ground. I understand that some of the equipment have been installed, but I want to find out why was the project, abandoned. Okay, that is my question. I'm not saying that he contributed to it, but I feel that that project is a worthwhile project, which was initiated by the wife of our late President Yaradua, a very good innovation, and we know the havoc that I said that cancer has wreaked on so many families in this country. Why has that project been abandoned?
Other words. Please read. Use your mic.
Order 55, the senator should confine himself to the issue relevant for discussion. Mr. President, Professor Ali Pati is not responsible for the building and equipping of the cancer center. It is a non-governmental organization spearheaded by the wife of late President Omar Musa Yar'Adua. And I'm the chairman of the cancer center. And the center has been under construction. We have virtually completed the building. We are looking for money to equip it. So it is not abandoned. It's not abandoned. And this question should not be directed to the nominee. If you permit me,
I would want to ask relevant questions, particularly on the healthcare delivery in Nigeria. We all know, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, there is
let him rule on your point.
Okay. All right.
The point of order is sustained. Now, let me just say something. If we want to talk about healthcare now, I will also have a lot of questions. For instance, I have, under my tenure as the governor, built the best general hospital in West Africa. It is exceedingly fantastic. And I will expect that if given the opportunity as a minister, Prof, you visit Uyo to take a look at that hospital, and also see how we can turn it into a center where people can stop the capital flights in the health sector by going abroad, because we have the best equipment all over the place. Then I want to point out from your CV, between 2011 and 2013, you served as the Minister of State for Health. Am I right? And you couldn't have served as the Minister of Health for Health unless you were screened by the Senate and confirmed by the Senate. Your second journey is welcome. Answer the only question posed to you, and because your screening still stands, if there's anything you've learned new since you resigned as the Minister of Health, mention it to the Senate, and thereafter you take a bow.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, distinguished senators, for these questions. I think this country is blessed, and its future can be bright. The health of its people is one of the most important things for that future to be realized in terms of where we ought to be and where we are today. Unfortunately, there's a gap, and to bridge that gap requires a consensus among all of us, leadership of the President and the Executive, and also the legislature, as well as the subnational units. Now, the question that Dr. Kaila asked is a very important one. How do we manifest the prioritization of health of our people except through the resources that we allocate to it? Financing is the core of it. There's the governance side, there's the financing side. That's how you communicate whether we prioritize it. God forbid, if something were to happen in this for one of us, myself or anyone else, God forbid it, there are conditions that could happen that before we get to where we can get the help, we will be in very serious conditions. So the prioritization of health in Nigeria has been suboptimal. And I'll explain why that is the case and answer Dr. Kaila's question. The total government expenditure on health is about $12 to $14 per person, with huge variation. Out-of-pocket spending is huge portion of the total health expenditure, about $54 per person. So in Nigeria, much of the spending on health is from families and out of pocket. And government puts $12 to $14 per person, which is roughly, if you add it up, about 1% of GDP. How does it compare to other places? Niger, our next door neighbors, have less resources than us, but they allocate more than double what we allocate in terms of their health spending relative to their GDP. That is indication of the prioritization. Same thing with a country like Ghana. Ghana similarly does that. The point that I'm trying to make is that domestic financing represents the prioritization that we give to health, but we are not spending enough, perhaps because the revenue is limited, But even within the limited revenue, there is room to increase the allocation for health, the domestic financing that Dr. Kaila mentioned. Without doing it, inadvertently, we are outsourcing the prioritization of health to external actors. So it's important that we work, not only the federal government, Ministry of Finance, Planning, Health, but also the subnational level and the legislature that appropriates these resources to safeguard the financing of essential things like vaccines. We're having outbreaks of diphtheria, measles, many communicable diseases are entirely preventable, and they can be prevented by simple vaccines that are very cheap, $1 to $2 a dose. It's unfortunate that parts of this country have some of the worst immunization coverages in the world. And immunization is one of the most effective tools of public health. So, Mr. President, I'm pleading that going forward under the renewal agenda of His Excellency, Mr. President, that we prioritize investments in health and investments in the things that can prevent diseases, that can protect our children who are the future of this country. The domestic manufacturing, if I can say, Mr. President. Yes. Yes, yeah, I will. I would say the second point is there's a scope for medical industrialization in this country that we have not attended to. 60 to 70% of our generics, the drugs that we take, are imported from countries that are just like us. There's an economic value chain in that health sector that we have not optimized. Same thing with our devices. Same thing on service delivery. So the health sector is not only a sector that we spend, but there's an economic development agenda that is inherent in health. In addition to the imperative for health security. So putting all those together, the consensus should be to prioritize health and to translate that prioritization in better investments through the budget process. Mr. President, I also have noted the questions on the infrastructure, and I think that's something that we can look at in due course. The question here before me is how do we prevent doctors moving from Nigeria to other countries? That's a very complicated question. I left this country in 1993. Why did I leave? Has it translated into better value than if I had stayed here? I think we produce health workers, we produce doctors and all kinds of professionals. We need to look at the conditions of service, the circumstances, the compensation, and in a way, re-energize the sector around the mission, because no one joins the health sector who is not committed to serving his or her patients. I think we need to renew that compact within the context of health to make it more conducive to retain the health workers that we produce, to deploy them effectively, to train them where needed, and to give them the tools where they can work with those tools to serve our people. That's going to be very important. And I would say the incessant labor disputes within the health sector that sometimes affect service delivery itself is something that can help, if resolved through building of trust between the government and the various professional groups, to reduce the tendency for folks to travel out of the country to other places. For those who travel, there are opportunities also to come back. I'm hoping, Mr. President, that with this move that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has done of convening Nigerians of all stripes to join the team that he's assembled, that will restore confidence and give hope that even folks that are outside the country will consider coming back to see how they can contribute. I made that choice with my eyes very wide open, but this is our country. So for those who have left, I will say next to service to God is service to country. So if the opportunity comes, even those who have left should find ways to contribute, and this country's health system will get better. On Gavi, how can Nigeria benefit more from Gavi and vaccine production? So Gavi, which is the entity that I would have served from tomorrow, is the largest global fund for health. It has $27 billion in terms of the fund it's raised, but also donations. It's based in Geneva, Switzerland, and over the last few years, it's invested at least $1 billion in Nigeria's health. For much of the vaccines that are provided in Nigeria, it is contributing and subsidizing the cost of the vaccines, just as it has for many other countries in the world, and during COVID supported 142 countries. That is the organization that I would have started as CEO tomorrow. Now, the production of vaccines is something that a country ought to decide. India is the pharmacy capital of the world. It didn't happen by accident. Indian government, Indian entrepreneurs, technology scientists, regulatory scientists came together and made that possible. We have a population of 214 million. If we start on the path of medical industrialization and say simple things like generics, 70% of them are imported, that we want to produce them here. How can we have the policy, regulatory, and financing structure so that we encourage that domestic production? 90% or more of our medical devices are imported. How can we organize our economic sector in health so that we produce it here, we create jobs, we return our foreign. If we start on that path and build our regulatory capacity based on what entities like NAFDAC are doing, it is very possible that we can move fast in the arena of other biologicals. Vaccines are one. There are countries in the continent that are planning to produce vaccines, Rwanda, Senegal. They are producing vaccines. If we don't act, it's to produce to sell to us. And we can go beyond the vaccines that are already in place, the cheaper vaccines, and go towards more advanced vaccines like cancer vaccines. Those are arenas that we can look forward, given the size of our economy, given the resources that God has imbued this country, and the leadership of our president, to see how we can invest on that path so that we will be more secure in the supplies that we get for our health and get the economic dividend from that investment. Mr. President, I will answer the question on cancer a bit from another angle. The infrastructural bit, cancer, we lose about 600,000 people from non-communicable diseases. We talk about infectious diseases, which are vaccine preventable. There are many other diseases that are non-communicable. Cancers are one of them, hypertension, diabetes, stroke, and others. Now, there are vaccines that can prevent some types of cancer. The hepatitis B vaccine. The hepatitis vaccines can prevent cancer. In effect, they prevent an infection that can cause cancer. The human papillomavirus vaccine for adults and girls prevents a viral infection that can lead to cancer, cervical cancer in women. And we have a large burden of cervical cancer, particularly in this country, and our women bear the brunt of it. Dealing with cancer, there's a preventive side, in addition to screening, but also the vaccination. There is a vaccine which is available in most other countries. And thankfully, in the next few months, Nigeria will get ready. We'll have the human papillomavirus vaccine, and Gavi is supporting that in this country. It's my hope that the consensus, including with the legislature, would educate our population to understand the value of preventing a disease before it happens, a disease that is lethal, like cervical cancer, and that once it's available, it's subsidized, that in fact it can be, just like several other vaccines. But in the future, with the technology of vaccine production, the mRNA vaccines, cancer vaccines will become a reality. And I am pleased to say, Mr. President, that we're confident that under the leadership of the President, Nigeria will be a hub for health, not only for our country, but also on the continent. Because what happens here has ramifications. We can supply our neighbors, we can supply rest of the continent as well. So the time is getting there when development, at least in health, we need to own it. We should be responsible for the health of our people. We should invest in that direction, and we should not outsource it, because the more we outsource it to donors from outside with grant financing, they can then influence our priorities. But the more we invest with our domestic resources, then we can control the priorities that fit with our people. And if we stick to the idea that government is about service and the people are the reason why government exists, then prioritizing the health of the population is going to be one of the most important things that we should all be doing. Because as it is, we have one of the lowest life expectancies. We are 2.4% of the world's population, almost a quarter of global maternal mortality, a fifth of child mortality, and the largest number of unimmunized children in the world. This is not a statistic that is hidden, it's out there, and we have what it takes to use what we have and spend it better and make sure that, in fact, we address this most basic thing to prevent diseases that can be prevented and to produce health. And there will be benefit because the trust of the population will be enhanced if the minimum they are able to get something that could help them. The human capital of this country can be preserved because health is not only a byproduct of development, it can be a consequence of development. If you have a healthy population, they will be more productive. And if you are more productive, you can invest more in health. And there's an economic imperative. Of course, there's a political dividend that Mr. President has also alluded to. So I would, Mr. President, stop here and happy to answer any additional question there may be. There's one question. Preparedness. I think it's a very important one.
On the microphone.
The question is on preparedness against outbreaks. And I think it's a very important one. Health security is part of national security. And let me explain. I was leading the World Bank's global practice on health when COVID hit. We saw a small virus came from Wuhan, affected just a tiny fraction of the world's population, an infectious disease, but it grounded the world's economy. Every country was affected, even those who were not infected. So from a health issue, you have an economic catastrophe that many countries are still struggling to recover. We had seen that with Ebola. So there's a direct linkage between health security and economic security and national security. But how do we prepare? And in the era of risks, climate, flooding, displacements, conflicts, migration, how do we prepare? We are not as prepared. And there's a lesson that we should learn from the last couple of years, that when the chips are down, the world will take care of itself, and we have to take care of ourselves. So preparedness includes strengthening our public health institutions, the Centers for Disease Control, other entities in the federal government, our laboratory infrastructure, our frontline health workers to be trained and ready, the trust between us and our people. Because when there's a crisis and you say, put a mask, if they don't believe you, they won't put a mask. You say, take this medicine, they won't believe you. So building that foundation of trust is also important, and that's what we do as part of preparedness. In addition to the more technical aspects of organizing ourselves to know that, are we ready when something starts? Do we have simulations, exercises that we can do to test where are the gaps, what have we learned? Strategic national stockpiles. When I was at the World Bank and pandemic hit, we put $6 billion on the table for countries. Your Excellency, many African countries reached out and said, how can we get test kits? How can we get ventilators? To my shock, the market stopped functioning. Cost of masks escalated. Ventilators were not available. Some big countries restricted access to their ventilators, and the market dysfunctioned. Even though we put money, but the money, we will buy ventilators for a country and they will say it will be delivered in 6 months, and people are dying. Oxygen was not available. So there are strategic national stockpiles, countries have them. How good is our strategic national stockpile? How do we construct it? When a disaster happens, it's not when it happens, like Dr. Tedros of WHO says, you don't build a roof when it's raining. You build that roof before it starts to rain. So most countries have those strategic stockpiles. How do we build that as part of our effort to deal with outbreaks? Because pandemics don't occur in isolation. They start from a small outbreak, they expand to an epidemic, and if not controlled, they go to a pandemic. God forbid, if there's an influenza pandemic, fast spreading infectious disease, more lethal than COVID, are we ready? Those are important, very sobering questions that I know countries are asking themselves. And we ought to ask ourselves, and it's not only the executive, but the legislature and also the subnational units. It's also the professional groups, civil society, to ensure that as a country, as a matter of our own security, our own human security, we are prepared. So, Mr. President, I will stop here. Thank you.
Well, the very distinguished colleagues, I'm sure you enjoyed the lecture. We actually invited him to answer questions, but he ended up lecturing. But Prof, I just want to put on record that I worked with you in my state when I was a governor, and were able to stop the further spread of polio. And my state was among the first states that you declared polio-free in the country. Under my leadership as governor, and under your advice and tutelage, I believe it is the view of the Senate that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu should be commended for going outside the shores of the country to bring back our country's best, to join in the renewed hope for all Nigerians. Is that the view of the Senate? Yes. That this nominee, who we believe strongly will add value to this country's governance, should take leave of this Senate by taking a bow down. Those in support say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prof, thank you for coming. Distinguished colleagues, just the last nominee for today, and then we revert to plenary shortly. So be patient with me.
And with that, Professor Ali Pate from Bauchi State makes his way out to the Senate chamber, talking about a very illustrious international public health career as a medical doctor. Of course, a development professional at the World Bank, former chief executive of the NPHCDA. Well, quite a lot has been said here, and like the Senate President said, there was quite a lecture, but a lot of information there on his background in the health sector that brings the number of nominees who have been screened by the Senate to 27. The initial list of the President had 28, which means that we have one more person from that list who will be coming in, and as you can see her walking into the Senate chambers there, Dr. Doris Uzoka from Imo State, the very last ministerial nominee from the first list of names forwarded by President Bola Tinubu to the Senate for confirmation.
Distinguished colleagues, the nominee before us is Dr. Doris Anita Uzoko from Imo State. Doctor, you're welcome to the hallowed chambers of the Nigerian Senate, and congratulations on your nomination by Mr. President. We have your resume, but if you have any other thing you want to add to the resume, or you want to do a summarized version of your resume for Nigerians to know you, who are not opportune to have this resume in front of them, you can use the next few minutes to do so. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Senate President. Thank you, the Deputy Senate President. Thank you, Senate President. Thank you, Deputy Senate President and principal senators here, as well as the distinguished senators here. Thank you for welcoming me into this hallowed chamber. I'm here as a ministerial nominee representing Imo State, who has been nominated by His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. I would like to use some time to introduce myself properly to you. But before I proceed, I would like to first give thanks to Almighty God for bringing me thus far. I would also like to thank my community for their support for training me, and I would like to thank all those who have played a role in mentoring me so far. So I want to thank my governor, Senator Hope Uzodimma. I want to thank Jim Ovia, chairman of Zenith Bank, and the entire management of Zenith Bank for their mentoring and their tutelage so far. My name is Dr. Doris Uzoka Anite. I would like to repeat my name because I know I've heard so many versions of my name. It's Doris, spelled with one R, Nkiruka, Uzoka, with a hyphen, Anite. I come from Osuobodo, Uguta local government area of Imo State. I had my early childhood in Osuobodo, Imo State. And then we left to Lagos State, where I completed my primary school. I also had my secondary education in Lagos State, and finally went to the University of Benin, where I obtained my Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery. I'm a medical doctor. Shortly afterwards, after graduation, I served as a houseman in a co-hospital, Lagos State. Then I also did my youth service in Lagos State under redeployment from Ebonyi State. I served in Barowa Primary Health Center in Lagos State, Surulere local government. Afterwards, I did a short medical service at Providence Hospital before pivoting my career into banking. I started and ended my banking career in Zenith Bank. My first appointment in Zenith Bank was to set up the Zenith Philanthropy and External Relations Department. I was a assistant banking officer. The responsibilities I held then as an assistant banking officer who was setting up the Zenith Philanthropy Department was to establish my mic is on, but okay. Can you hear me now? It's better? Thank you. I set up the Zenith Philanthropy and External Relations Department as an assistant banking officer. My responsibility was to establish the corporate social responsibility of the bank and to set a course for the bank's philanthropic activities and its corporate social responsibility. Some of those things that we did still stand to record, one of them being the construction or reconstruction of the Ajose Adiogun street, which still stands as one of the best streets. And still being used till tomorrow as one of, for the youth parade, Christmas youth parade, as well as the Christmas lighting, and it still stands as an icon till today. Due to my performance in my various responsibilities, I got triple promotions, double promotions. Eventually, I headed the Human Resources Department and the Training Department of Zenith Bank, actually 8 years after I joined the bank. And that was actually a phenomenal success or record. As head of Human Resources, I was responsible for translating the strategic objectives of the bank into execution. And then I was asked to ensure that we grew, quadrupled the profitability of the bank. And then I identified that human resources was the best or the most valuable asset any company could have, or any nation. So using my recruitment skills, because I first headed the recruitment department, we identified and identified very qualified personnel, hired them, trained them, equipped them with the skills they needed, and deployed them to areas where their skills met their competencies. And we can see the growth translate into the profitability of Zenith Bank today. Under my watch, we grew Zenith Bank from 80 branches to 400 branches. And we also quadrupled the performance of the bank in its balance sheet size. Afterwards, I was redeployed to Treasury Department. I started my career in Treasury Department as a bond trader, head of bonds trading. Then I moved on to currency trading. Then afterwards, I became the head trader for the bank. And I set up the Zenith Sales Department, as well as the Financial Institutions Department. Shortly afterwards, I was promoted to become the group head of Treasury. As a group head of Treasury, I was responsible for the balance sheet management of the bank. I was responsible for balance sheet management of the bank across all its subsidiaries, and this also included its foreign currency liability and assets and liability. I also was responsible for the revenue growth of the bank, and under me, we recorded year-on-year growth of over 36%. I was also the chief investment officer of the bank. And most of the investment, you can see some of the activities or my contribution to the growth of the bank. I work with a team of highly qualified individuals, some of whom also benefited from my own direct tutelage and mentorship. While working as a general manager and the group head of Treasury of Zenith Bank, I was identified and spotted by my current governor, who actually reached out to the bank to request for my redeployment to Imo State to work as his commissioner for finance. Following his request, I was redeployed, or rather, I was allowed to go to serve, a service I consider as one of the most important service of my own lifetime, the service to humanity. And when I got to Imo State then was just starting to experience the height of insecurity. It was a very difficult environment, but I sat down with my governor and we determined its economic development plan. And then we sat down, and Imo State, being a transit state, is actually in the center of the southeastern bloc. And we have a lot of traffic going through that state to other states. And so it was very central to the economic activities and the commercial activities of that region. So we identified that construction of road was one of the most important things that we needed to do. And I can tell you, then with very sparse resources, we decided to, we went on to construct to today over 37 roads. And then apart from that, as a coordinating commissioner for the state as well, I undertook a lot of responsibilities, including strategic financial management, where I prioritized economic development, certain activities that was going to turn around the economy of the state. Infrastructural growth and development. I focused on industry and trade, A lot of those things are my accomplishments are in my CV. I'm already getting signals to round up. At this point, I would like to just talk about briefly what I do currently. Though I still am the Commissioner of Finance for Imo State, I've worked in several committees in this present government, starting with the Policy Advisory Council, where we've developed and formulated the roadmap for the current administration, to the Presidential Strategy Team, where we came up with strategies to mitigate or to cushion the effect of the first subsidy removal, to the Presidential Food Security Council, where I currently work as the Secretary, developing the food security strategies for the country, as well as the Presidential Economic Team, where we're working currently to solve the FX crisis in the country. That's in summary what I have done. Thank you, distinguished senators.
Thank you. Let me now yield the floor to Senator Asukwa Ikpeong.
Good evening, Mr. President. Good evening, distinguished colleagues. My name is Senator Asukwa Ikpeong, Senator representing Cross River South. Dr. Doris is a person that is known to me. She served as Commissioner of Finance for Imo State while I was her counterpart for Cross River State for several years. Beyond that, we served on the Presidential Campaign Council for our party and on the Policy Advisory Council after our president-elect was declared. She's someone who has a lot of resources, deeply intelligent, and extremely hardworking. I know her capacity, and I implore you that she is here to be screened, here to answer your questions, and I'd like to start by asking her a question myself. Dr. Doris, based on your CV, based on the work that I am privy to that you have been doing on the Policy Advisory Council, I see that if you are cleared here, you may be ending up, or your trajectory is towards trade and investment. I would like to ask questions in that area. Today, one of the issues bedeviling the micro, small, medium enterprise in this country is the lack of adequately priced capital in the sector for them to grow. I'd like to ask, a lack of adequately priced capital. I'd like to ask what your intentions are if you were in such a ministry as Trade and Investment to stimulate the growth of that sector. Also, there are issues of multiplicity of agencies intervening in that sector. How do you intend to eliminate that duplication and streamline the interventions from agencies such as Smeden, Bank of Industry, Nexim, NEPC, etc.? Thank you very much.
Senator Ndubweze.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting as chair. Fellow distinguished senators, my name is Engineer Ndubweze Patrick C., representing Imo North from Imo State. Mr. President, the person standing before us, Commissioner for Finance and Coordinating Economy in Imo State, supervising 12 ministries. The person standing before us, coordinating commissioner is enough. So, you can see quite an intellectual. You can see a medical doctor who vied into banking industry. In a short while, she became a general manager and a group treasurer of such a big bank like Zenith Bank. So dedicated, that I know that we would like to ask her some questions because she is somebody who is always ready to discharge. But I don't think that we'll even belabor ourselves so much because she is use point of order, because she is somebody without any doubt we can believe that with her, whether we put her in the Ministry of Finance, she will do well. Whether you put her in the Ministry of Health, she will be wonderful. Whether you put her in the Ministry of Trade and Industry, she will be excellent. I think she's an exceptional nominee, and she will be exceptional minister. In fact, she will be an uncommon minister. So I would suggest that those who are itching to ask questions, just be brief so that she can just... Those who must ask questions, be brief. Let her bow and take a leave. I'm pleading to all of you, my friend. I'm pleading to all of you. You know, when you have the best, you don't need to belabor the best. She's excellent. I thank you all for listening, and maybe allow my colleague from Imo State, Ostis Naso, to add his verse. And I have another brother there, Onyewuchi. But the truth is that we don't need to bother her with questions. She's wonderful.
Well, to be honest, Senator Patrick Ndubweze has taken over the job of the presiding officer. After speaking, he also nominated the next person to speak. So I don't intend to disobey you. Therefore, I concur. The distinguished Senator Izunaso, you have been nominated to speak.
Mr. President, sitting as chair, my distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Osita Izunaso from Imo West. Mr. Chair, the nominee before us, Dr. Mrs. Doris Uzoka Anietem, is one of our best and brightest in the banking and finance sector, spanning over 2 decades. Mr. President, this multi-talented, cross-functional managerial with heavy managerial ability has a lot of experience in both IT, treasury, human resource management, etc., etc. Mr. President, we can attest to the fact that since she came to Imo State as the Commissioner for Finance and Coordinating Economy, the Imo State IGR have moved from point A to point B, and Imo players are very happy with that. Mr. President, I do not think that we are going to overlabor her this afternoon with plenty of questions, because we all know that she's very capable. If you look at her resume, she's extremely capable. And I can look at the time, it's past 5. And yesterday, we had a tradition of allowing the last woman that came yesterday to take a leave. And today, Mr. President, sitting as chair, I will request my distinguished colleagues that we allow her to take a leave of the Senate. Having worked very hard for this country, having worked very hard in the banking sector, I believe that any ministry she finds herself, she will do a thorough and a very good job. I rest my case, Mr. President.
Thank you. Distinguished Senator Ezenwa.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. My name is Ezenwa Onyewuchi, and I represent Imo East Senatorial District. Mr. President, let me first of all congratulate the nominee before us, Dr. Doris Uzoka, and to say she is a nominee in whom we are well pleased. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the nominee before us is an astute professional with rich pedigree and impressive resume. This is somebody that started her career as a medical practitioner and moved from there to the banking sector, where she excelled and got to the zenith of her career at the Zenith Bank. The lady before us, in pursuit of her passion, has also come to serve as commissioner for finance and coordinating economy in my home state of Imo State. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I do not have any doubt. I do not have any doubt, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, that the nominee before us will be an asset to this administration. I have no doubt whatsoever, Mr. President, that this nominee will add value. I therefore want my colleagues, and I urge you to give her expeditious confirmation to take up her responsibility in the Federal Executive Council. I so submit, Mr. President.
The distinguished Senator Kinkibe.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, first and foremost, I'd like to congratulate the nominee. And to my colleagues, I want to say it is clear from her CV that we're looking at a very special woman, a woman who is well accomplished, a decision of excellence by His Excellency, the President of Nigeria, for picking people of her caliber who can make a difference to Nigeria. And so I'm trying to tell my colleagues also that there's no need to labor her. I'm sure that if we let her, she will be answering questions for the next 2 hours. But I know that as us senators, we do not want to be here for the next 2 hours. Since it is quite unnecessary, I think we should also let her take a bow and go, as we have done to all the other men and women of caliber that we have seen here in the last couple of days. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Orwell.
Thank you, Mr. President. I join others, just like Senator Kingibe just pointed out. The lady standing before us, Dr. Anete, is from her CV, is an accomplished person.
I have much to say again than to queue behind my brother, distinguished Senator Eshinoku, that I fully support and also appeal to my colleagues to support the nomination of Dr. Maruf Alausa. But the way and manner that he had conducted his practice, he has also made provision to also serve the underserved, that is, people who cannot afford Medicare. And also he's made tremendous contributions in terms of research work and publications that will continue to enrich his profession. And of course, he was also a member of the Presidential Advisory Council, particularly under the health subsector that ushered in part of the plans of the of our current administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR. I also will appeal to all my colleagues to fully support his candidature as a minister of the Federal Republic. Mr. President, I so submit. Thank you.
Point of order? Order what?
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Karimi Sunday Steve. I represent Kogi West from Kogi State. Order 55, Rule 13. Senators shall attend the sitting of the Senate properly dressed in non-traditional and formal attire. Senator Wadada. You are not properly dressed.
No time.
He's not properly dressed.
Senate, distinguished colleagues, distinguished Senator Karimi, your point of order is sustained. Distinguished Senator Abdul Fattah.
Yes, sir. Mr. President, sitting as the chair, Dr. Maruf, my name is Senator Abdul Fattah Buhari, Oyo North. I was going through your CV and I'm impressed. Today, in the United States of America, where I know you know the place very well, over 35% of the resident doctors there, foreign doctors, are Nigerians, which means we have the manpower, they have the brain. Number one, what are you going to do to stop the brain moving, migrating from Nigeria to America or Europe? Two, the facility in Nigeria today are not there. What are you going to do in case you find yourself in the Ministry of Health to bring our health care, even if you can't match them 100%, but to the level where you have the confidence to see a doctor in Nigeria? More than 80% of my colleagues here, even ordinary headache, they would rather stay home instead of going to the hospital, because the fear is that the equipment are not there. But we know we have the people that are capable to do the job. If you find yourself there, what are the things you can do to retain them? Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Distinguished Senator Sadiq Umar.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sitting as chair, my distinguished colleagues, Mr. Nominee, congratulations, and like it's been said, your work so far is acknowledged and we appreciate it. But I have a concern, which is that I've always insisted, that to develop this country, there are key sectors we need to focus on, which is education and healthcare. They are the key two sectors to develop Nigeria. Now, in the health sector, we are so concerned that the Constitution recognizes health to have fallen under concurrent list, which means both at federal, state, and in fact the local government, everybody is intervening in the healthcare sector. This has led to so many duplications, confusions, and so much uncoordinated activities going on in that sector. Now, this National Assembly wanted to help this system to ensure that there is universal health coverage, and we passed a bill where 1% of the CRF is dedicated, just because we want to make sure health gets to the lowest level. But till now, Mr. Nominee, the big problems still remain. And you know, all the grammar we speak about healthcare, the whole thing ends up with the outcomes, what we are interested in. And the outcome, as we speak today, is as bad as maternal mortality rate is still over 814 by 100,000 live births. Infant mortality rate, very bad, 70 for every 1,000 live births. Under 5 mortality rate, very bad, over 100, about 104 by every 1,000 live births. So what are we going to do differently? Because we've been going around, the state governments are making effort, local governments are making effort, but the coordination is not there. What are you going to do differently? Because this is the key to our success. That coordination, to be sure that we bring down these indicators slowly, so that, you know, we can have healthy citizens, that if we give good education, we'll be productive and we'll be on our way to developing the society. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Alero.
Thank you, Mr. President, sitting in the chair, my distinguished colleagues. Mr. Nominee, let me start by saying that I'm very impressed with your CV. I went through it. We are very proud that a Nigerian could attain this kind of achievements. So congratulations. Having said that, Mr. President, let me start with the famous dictum that health is wealth. A healthy nation is also a wealthy nation. Primary health care, secondary health care, tertiary health care are the responsibilities of local government, state government, and federal government, respectively. Unfortunately, the primary health care and secondary health care are not functioning well. And tertiary health care has been overburdened. The heavy congestion of patients in our tertiary healthcare institutions. If eventually you are assigned to Ministry of Health, what can you do to ensure that primary health care, secondary health care are shared among the different arms of government, so that each section of the healthcare will function efficiently and effectively. Lack of healthcare is making Nigerians to go for medical tourism, particularly in Europe, Egypt, and India. As a professional of international refuge, what can you do to reduce medical tourism in Nigeria? Billions of dollars have been spent by Nigerians. While we have so many Nigerians, as said by my colleagues, in Europe, America, and the Middle East, that has happened in the healthcare delivery in various countries. Thoroughbred professionals like you, what can we do to bring them so that we will stop medical tourism? Thank you, Mr. President.
Dismissed Senator Tambua.
Mr. President, sitting as chair, my colleagues, the nominee, let me join my colleagues in congratulating you for accepting to come back home and serve our dear country despite else. Let me join my colleagues in congratulating you for accepting to come back home and serve our dear country in this capacity, despite all of your achievements and what possibly you may continue to enjoy if you continue to serve elsewhere.
Abbas, Adamawa Central. Mr. Nominee, my questions is related to the last two questions, but I want to put it in a different way. There's argument that health tertiary institutions shouldn't be run by government, should go private. And those proponents of this private sector participation are saying that it will reduce the brain dry and as well as medical tourism. Now, if you hold this saying and you want it to go private, how will you now advise the government vis-a-vis the health insurance coverage of Nigerians? Thank you.
Distinguished Senator Yaradua.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, my name is Abdulaziz Musa Yaradua, representing the good people of Katsina Central. I'm from Katsina State. Dr. Moruf Olatunji Alausa, I want to congratulate you for being nominated by our most respected president. And I've seen you have a very rich CV. You know, some of us are locally trained here, but from your CV, you are based in the United States, and I've seen that you have been named one of America's best physicians in 2007, 2012, and 2020. If you are confirmed by this Senate and you are appointed to be the Minister of Health, one of the challenges we are facing in this country right now in our medical or in our public hospitals is that the medical ethics that you know, which is very efficient both in Europe and the United States and other developed nations, where patients and medical practitioners are very, very careful to ensure that they don't make mistakes. In the event a patient dies, usually there will be a medical board. Here in Nigeria, a lot of people die in our hospitals due to negligence of doctors and some other medical practitioners, both in our public hospitals and the private hospitals. And no medical board is constituted to investigate this type of issues, except if probably the patient is a highly placed person. What will you do if you find yourself as a Minister of Health to ensure that our public hospitals and the private hospitals abide by these medical ethics? Number two, I have seen in your CV that you are a certified nephrologist and a kidney expert. Though I'm a layman, but I think most of our public hospitals, I don't think we have efficient kidney centers. You can see that most of our people in Nigeria here travel abroad if they have patients with kidney problems. Right now, one of our own, the former Deputy Senate President, Senator Ike Ikweremadu, who, because of his daughter in search of health, traveled to UK. Today, we all know where he is. I believe if there are efficient kidney centers in Nigeria, probably he wouldn't have traveled abroad to seek for medical attention for his daughter. So my question is, if you become the Minister of Health, what will you do to ensure, being a kidney expert, to ensure that we have efficient kidney centers so that Nigerians in the future will not have to travel abroad? Thank you very much.
Distinguished colleagues, so many people want to ask questions. So because of that, so you won't lose track of the questions. Let's give him an opportunity to answer, and thereafter others can ask. Please.
Thank you, distinguished senators. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, distinguished senators. I'm very happy, quite impressed with the variety of questions that have been posed to me. This just vindicates my impression of this august house, that we're very, very passionate, dedicated Nigerians are assembled to really move our country forward. Most of these questions are actually, they fall within one lane, which is just, we don't have a healthcare system now. It's really suboptimal. Except for the question that Senator Yaradua asked on liability insurance issue, I'll address that later. And the other question from Senator Abdul Fattah Buhari on the Japa syndrome, I'll come to those two. But the other questions falls within one main category of what we have now is not working the way it should. I'm a fervent believer in private sector driven healthcare economy. That is how we can fix it. We need a very good payer system. If you don't have a payer system, you cannot fix this healthcare system. If we continue to do what we're doing now, where the larger chunk of the funding is coming from government, they say if you do the same thing, don't ever expect to see a different result. You will see the same result. We need a robust payer system. I would like to commend the Ninth Assembly. They did something very futuristic. They passed two landmark bills: the expanded National Health Insurance Act and the provision for the basic healthcare provision fund. This is really these two bills we can really use it to create a linchpin, a launching pad, how we can build a very robust payer system. What we now need to do is to encourage international insurance companies to come into the country to support, to complement
these small, scattered third-party players that we have today. Big multinational companies like United Health, Humana, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois, they will come. We have the population. Once we start getting these international companies to come, they will bring the technology, funding, robust platform to complement what we have. What we will quickly see is that we will have a private sector where we have a huge sum of money going into the pool, and then the National Health Insurance Scheme can now begin to function as a regulator of the private health insurance sector, and then act as the operator of the government part of the scheme, because we already have the Basic Health Provision Fund that has dedicated a pool of money to vulnerable population, young kids, infants, mothers, elderlies. So we can use that money to fund those vulnerable groups. So what we would quickly get to, we will have what operates in America today, when you have the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, taking care of the vulnerable group, and you have robust private payer system taking care of the other people. Once we've done that, we now have enough resources coming into our system. What we're worried now about Japa syndrome, doctors going abroad would naturally start to get better. I'm a physician, and I'm not trying to be very partial here, but I know with certainty, anybody that trains to be a doctor wants to serve humanity. Care for their patient. It's not about money alone, poor economy, but they don't have the adequate infrastructure to care for their patient. It is very, very frustrating. And that's why we see this massive outward migration of doctors out of the country. We need to fix our healthcare infrastructure, and beyond that, compensate our physicians adequately. We also, to now begin to address this Japa syndrome of people going out, once you adequately compensate your physicians, fix infrastructure, you provide enabling environment for them to work. Now, we also have to start engaging our diaspora doctors, we engage them to come. Once the right environment is created, they will come. A lot of people we want to serve our country. Now, beyond that, we also need to quickly increase the pool of the doctors we're producing. We have about 50 medical schools in the country. Government can provide special funding to these medical schools to double the number of doctors that are being produced. So, on that. Now, I would like to quickly talk on a very, very important, Senator, sorry, you said something about how can we get the sub-national government to take care of the primary and secondary health care system. Now, the federal government cannot force the local government beyond the federal funds being allocated. The federal government cannot force them to do what they have to do. But what is lacking here is there's the National Council of Health, which should be a meeting of the federal minister and the governors, where really health policy issues should be discussed. This council is not functional. They meet probably once a year or twice a year. This is not optimal. The National Council of Health should be really re-engaged to serve its purpose, and that's why we can get the sub-national government to do their role, to do what they need to do in terms of primary care and secondary health care. Now, Senator Yaradua, you answered and you asked a very important question of the way medical liability. Now, literally, there's no regulation. Anybody can just, any healthcare provider can just kill a patient. Nothing happens. That's it. Nothing happens. There's literally no consequence. We can't operate a healthcare system like that. We need to set up, like what obtains abroad, quality regulatory boards at the federal and at the state level. These quality regulatory boards would actually begin to credential and certify healthcare facilities, and patients who felt they haven't been treated well can report to those boards, and then the medical practitioner license will be withdrawn, will be suspended. Once that begins to happen, people will be accountable for their actions. That's one thing that is lacking and we need to do. Also, you said something that is very passionate to my heart. This is what I do every day: lack of kidney care centers here, namely dialysis clinics and transplantation service in the country. You know, it's about you don't have the funding. Averagely, one session of, even in Nigeria today, one session of dialysis cost about 25,000 naira. If you have to do at least, at standard you do 3 times a week, Nigeria they do twice a week. That's 50,000 naira a week. In a month, 200,000 naira. Even if you're a multi-millionaire and continue to do this, you will expend your money. One of the major causes of bankruptcy in the world is lack of health insurance coverage. Once we now have a robust payer system where the insurance pay for the dialysis, they pay for transplant, clinics will spring up. This is business, they follow where the money is. We can now begin, what we have now, our healthcare sector is only contributing less than 2.5% to our GDP. We need to really invite more private involvement, where we can quickly increase year by year contributory GDP by 5%. If we're able to do that, in 4 years, we can get our GDP to the GDP get the GDP to about 22%, where we have the health sector contributing to it. Today, in America, 22% of the GDP there, the healthcare accounts for 22% of GDP. That translates into $3.3 trillion spent. If we're able to do the same thing here, we can quickly bring in a lot of money into the healthcare sector, and what will happen, we'll create a healthcare sector that is even bigger than the oil and gas sector. And what will happen, compared to oil and gas, healthcare sector, it has a heavy need for manpower. What we can quickly do, we will get to that level. Now we'll engage a lot of young unemployed citizens coming into the labor force, getting decent job, paying government taxes. This is we can do this. We just have to have focused leadership to get this done. I hope I've answered all the questions.
Not totally. I see the hand of distinguished Senator Idiot. She's representing Lagos. Maybe there is something you did in Lagos that she wants to bring forth.
Your Excellency, the Senate President, distinguished colleagues, before you is Dr. Tuji Alausa, a health practitioner of decades of experience. If confirmed, Dr. Alausa will be an asset in the balance sheet of Nigeria. And I will listen to him. He has explained to us all of his exploits outside of this country, in the private sector and the public sector. And I have no doubt in my mind that Dr. Tuji has proved to all of us that he has what it takes to run the Health Ministry if confirmed. Distinguished senators, I recommend Dr. Tuji Alausa for your confirmation and plead for the understanding of other senators. And I take the leave of the President of the Senate to please allow Dr. Tuji Alausa to take the leave of the Senate. Thank you.
Distinguished colleagues, just in case there is something that happened in the Southeast so that we don't marginalize Southeast. Distinguished Senator Nweboyi, your hand has been up.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Dr. Alausa, from your records, you may be the next health minister. And if that happens, I want to bring your attention to two things. One, if you go through our pharmaceutical stores across the nation, 50% of the drugs there are fake drugs. What can you do to avert this, in knowledge of the fact that NAFDAC is an agency under Federal Ministry of Health? Number two, medical profession today is being overtaken by quacks more than any other profession in Nigeria. As a health minister, what can you do to stop this menace in view of the sensitive nature of the medical profession? Because when you go to the rural areas, you see those that have a community health certificate conducting surgery, and in most cases leads to loss of life. As a health minister, how can you tackle this? Thank you.
Senator Nweboyi, you actually spoke my mind, because I was waiting for distinguished senators to ask him about the activities of quacks. That even as we speak now, 5 people must have died today as a result of the activities of quacks. Nurses are doing surgery in private domains. Even people, dispensers in the chemist are also giving injections. And a lot of people are dying. I've had a personal family experience in 2019, and I was going to ask him, so outside the fake drugs, the issue of quackery in the system, but there is one question that has not yet been asked, so I don't need to be the one to ask. So let me give the opportunity to Senator Kalia Dahawa, and I think Senator Kalia, you are also a doctor. You are a doctor. Okay, let me see whether you ask that question. If you don't ask, I'll ask, then he will close.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, Dr. Alausa, I just want to ask you a straight question. And I'm asking you as a doctor, and a private doctor for that matter. One of the biggest problems we are having is the leadership don't want to face the truth and face the doctors, in my opinion. There is a report of World Bank, I think it's of 2017, and I tried to corroborate it yesterday, and I found that they said in our urban areas, 80% of the private hospitals are owned by doctors working in government practices, receiving salary of government, and at the same time operating private hospitals. And by so doing, you have a situation whereby the private is no good, the government is no good. Because you cannot divide your attention and have 100% output. Will you be able, if you are appointed Minister of Health, to face these challenges head on, so that all this quackery that is happening in our hospitals and in our other places will be taken head on, so that at least something can be done to save the situation. Thank you, sir.
Yes. Thank you, distinguished Senator. Senator Neda, I've seen you. I've seen Senator Dankwambo. But Senator Dankwambo, your question may be related to the financials. So go ahead.
Thank you, the Senate President. Let me start by congratulating the nominee and also to congratulate him for having this very nice CV. My question, sir, the nominee was given opportunity in the last administration to be one of the top advisors on health. And today, when you go around our federal teaching hospitals and federal medical centers, the situation is very bad and requires very urgent attention of the government. When I was elected, I think the first people to meet up with me are the people from the Federal Teaching Hospital Gombe. The situation is so critical. People are just sitting there. The equipments are in bad shape. The environment is not good. And delivery of health services are challenged. So I don't know what motivates you to come back. But what will you do different now to ensure service of health service delivery is different going forward from now? Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Onawo.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, sitting as chair. Dr. Lausa, congratulations for your nomination. My name is Senator Mohammed Ogoshi Onao. I represent Nasarawa South. I am bothered by the spread of serious life-threatening cases as a result of accidents or gunshot wounds and life-threatening issues that are taken to hospitals that doctors or nurses will refuse to attend to such patients because there is no police report. I know you said just a while ago that doctors want to serve humanity when they decide to go into the profession. Now, if an accident happens in an environment where there is no police at hand and the patient is dying, should this patient die because there is no police to give a report? What can you do to forestall such? Thank you.
I think that is a very good question. There are a lot of people with gunshot wounds, not through their faults, sometimes as a result of stray bullets, are dying in various hospitals because the hospitals have refused to treat them, waiting for police report. But if he's given an opportunity in the health sector, what will he do to stop the loss of lives of innocent citizens? We will allow you to answer that. But I just want to add one more question. if you are given an opportunity, what will you do to assist the poor people who are daily being detained in various hospitals in the country after treatments? A lot of poor people who cannot afford 2,000 naira, 1,000, 5,000 to pay for medical treatments are being detained for days in various hospitals in the country. And I know this, if you are one of those who move around, particularly during your birthdays and you try to go around the hospitals, you'll be shocked that some people after delivery of children, they are not able to pay the full bill and they are being detained with the newborn babies in various hospitals in the country. And these are federal medical centers, federal hospitals and state hospitals. They are not allowed to go home. They are told to stay there until they pay. Is there any form of arrangement that you will do that can cater to settle the medical bills of these very poor people who are suffering in the hospitals, not through their faults? That's the question. And the Senate President, you may add the question so that he can answer, because if we can't solve all our health problems today, we have to take other people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Mr. Nominee. My name is Barozi Brinkano North. Still on the plight of our referral hospitals. Most of the cases, medical cases that our people go through in this country are the likes of malaria, colds, and so on, that can be treated at the primary healthcare centers or clinics. But yet, most of these people that have this kind of medical challenges go to referral hospitals, especially in the cities. They go to the teaching hospitals, thereby overstretching the capacity of the referral hospital. Whereas it's only cases that are complicated are supposed to be, taken to the referral hospitals. So what are you going to do to change this trend? Because we are overstretching our referral hospitals, all right? So what are you going to do if eventually you are confirmed and maybe the president feels that you should be the Minister of Health? What are you going to change the trend? Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished senators. I'm very, very excited with these impressive questions. Senator Barrow, I'll take your question first. Primary healthcare centers are literally non-functional. Senator Alero alluded to that. What we need to do, we need to go beyond just building infrastructures. What we're saying is, we build one primary care center in every local government in the country. We're going to double it to 2. And now we have, I was at the presentation as part of my work on the Presidential Advisory Council, meeting the CEO, the Director General of the National Primary Healthcare Agency. He told me, I said, we have 10,000 primary healthcare centers in the country today. Less than 30% of these centers are functional. So they're there, but they're deserted. No community health worker, no nurses, no physician there. But once we begin to really realign our priorities, we get this, what we have today, we don't need to build anymore. Let's be honest with our people. It's not the structure, it's what goes in there that matters. Once we begin to adequately equip this, what we have now, provide the needed personnel there, Senator Barrow, the people will go there. If I live in Castina, city of Castina today, there's a primary care center that's 5 miles from my house, and I know if I go there at 9 p.m., I'll meet a healthcare provider there. I'll go there as a citizen of Castina. I will not drive 2 hours to go to the city to go to a teaching hospital. So what we need to do, we define our priorities, get this, what we have now, get them functional. And we can do that. We just need focused leadership to get this done. Now, I'm going to go to the question of the Senate President about people being detained. After, this is really very pathetic. It's sad. But then, the way to get this done is to have a payer system. And today, the basic healthcare provision fund can actually provide for those patients, but it's not being operated well. The Senate has done its own. You've passed this fund. It's a percentage of the federal budget, but it's not being managed. The National Health Insurance Agency they're not managing this fund well. So there's already a solution for that. This kind of patient can get rolled into this program that we already have that are existing. But there's so much disconnection in the way those two programs are being managed.
Because the public will be very interested in what they are saying. The question is information dissemination. Now, you are saying that the Senate had already provided a solution by passing a bill that was signed into an act, providing, what do you call it?
Yeah, the bill is the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. The funds are there, and that in the funds, let me tell you how the funds was apportioned. 55% of the fund is meant to 55% of that fund is meant to go to the National Health Insurance Agency, while about 40% of that fund goes to the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, and about 5% to the National Emergency Management Agency. But the way those funds are being managed, nobody knows.
Okay. Now, if you are given an opportunity to be a Minister of Health or to work in the health sector, how will you manage the fund? What modalities will you put in place? Want to even let the farmer and the poor people in Nigeria to know that there is succor provided by government through legislation, and that those funds are actually there to assist them instead of they are being detained in hospitals weeks and months after their surgery and after deliveries. What will you do differently to make sure that the public is, one, aware, and two, impacted by these funds?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Fixing this problem is actually quite easy. It's just to build synergy, but before then, aggressive orientation and education of the public to let them know of the availability of this fund. And that when I say build synergy, we can now get the National Health Insurance Agency that has a large pool of this money to now begin to enroll patients like this. Now, if a patient gets to the hospital today, if they don't have coverage, they know the fund is there, they can apply for emergency health care insurance coverage. And we will mandate the National Health Insurance Agency to approve the coverage within 48 hours, once they've gotten the biometrics of the patient. And once that's done, once that patient is now able to provide evidence of insurance coverage to the hospital, they know they can get their money from the National Health Insurance Agency. Very simple.
Apparently, we can't keep you forever. But I would think that you should also involve the legislators, House of Representatives and Senators, and you should bring out guidelines and share those guidelines with us. So when we go back home, we also educate our constituents and give them those forms to fill, and for them to have an idea that such succor is in existence to assist the poorest poor, because it will also save them from embarrassments and death. Then, my final question, which is actually supposed to come from the floor, but it did not come, is that today, Many doctors in the employment of the federal government and state government abandon the general hospitals, abandon the federal government institutions for their own private hospitals. And they also divert. Oh, has he answered? He has answered. He has answered. Okay. But in addition, allegations abound that sometimes equipment provided by federal government find their way into the private clinics of the hospital or the doctors. So they are getting monthly salaries, but their private clinics are booming, while the government hospitals are empty and patients are dying. What will you do differently to change the orientation so that Nigerians can get the benefit of the funds that federal government continually puts into these hospitals and also the state governments?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would actually, it's about the same question that the distinguished senator on the Hall there asked about the role of these doctors having dual interest. They go, work in the public hospital and go to the private hospital to work. Their loyalty is divided. Now, Mr. President, you've added a third tripod to it on the fact that these doctors, beyond abandoning their work, they also use government equipment to go and do their private work. There are lots of problems here. We don't have standard policy and procedures in place to discipline this physician. And that's what the senator said, that the government or NMA, they're very reluctant in confronting the doctor. We have to. They have to be held accountable. That's what happens everywhere to any profession. You have to be held accountable. If you're not held accountable, you do whatever you want. We don't have, and that's why we have to build a robust regulatory body that will hold all these doctors accountable. A member of a senator or an House of a rep member or state assembly member can, if they are constituent and go to complain, exact the complaint that's coming to you, Mr. President, they can call the regulatory agency. This is what I'm seeing in my hospital, in my district in Iyo. Doctors are not there. They abandon the place, they take equipment. The regulatory agency will come, unbiased, investigate. If those allegations are found to be true, the doctors will be sanctioned. Their license will get suspended. No doctor, no professional wants their license to be suspended. That's a pathway to feeding, and that's what separates you from lunatism. You want to protect their license. It's making people accountable. That's how we can begin to fix problems like this. Now, I need to quickly answer Senator Mohammed Onaho, distinguished Senator Mohammed Onaho. This is actually sad when you have trauma victims being taken to hospital still alive, and somebody is saying, "Oh, we can't care for you because you need to get a police report." That, as a doctor, the Hippocratic oath that we took, it's first, do no harm. You see a patient that is dying, and you're not caring for that patient, but it's more of a systemic problem and lack of communication. I don't think the way to quickly fix this is to provide policy and procedures that will guide everybody on how to handle accident patients. You don't need police report to treat trauma patients. This will be communicated to the Inspector General, because what happened is that all these healthcare providers are scared. The police will come and prosecute them. That, oh, you've treated a victim, a fraudster, and then what happened? That's what they're afraid of. But even if you're a fraudster, even if you're a robber, and you're not dead yet, it's your right to live. You can be treated, be rescued, be saved, and then be prosecuted. That's it. You don't say, oh, I'm not going to treat you because you're a robber, and then you die. You've taken that ability for that person to live into your hand. That is not acceptable, and that's not the way doctors are trained. First, do no harm. Now, let me quickly answer distinguished Senator Nwobo's question about NAFDAC and quacks. That actually fits well into distinguished Senator Yar'Adua's question. Medical liability. There are lots of quacks there. Why there are quacks is that there's no accountability. I can be a nurse today, open a healthcare shop there, start doing deliveries. Nobody's regulating. All the healthcare facilities are not regulated. In Western world, every single health facility must have a license, a license for you to treat. And that license also has different layers. You can be an outpatient clinic. If you want to add surgical operation to it, you have to apply, and they come to inspect the facility that you have. And you don't even get that license once, and they say, oh, you got in license 10 years, bye-bye. You get re-inspected every 1 to 2 years. You have to maintain those standards. We need to build quality regulatory body that will take care of this. Now, with regard to NAFDAC, it's a little bit sad to say it's beyond these fake pharmaceutical drugs coming in. These fake drugs, these drugs are killing our people. A lot of people are developing kidney failure because of drugs, counterfeit drugs. This is causing more morbidity into our society. And it's very unfortunate to say today, NAFDAC is not functioning the way it should be. It's not functioning. And if I'm given the opportunity, that's one of the first agency that I will totally reform. It's not functioning. NAFDAC is not doing its work. Not doing its work.
At that point, you can see the sincerity of Dr. Alausa. I think just like every other person here, I've also been a victim of medical neglect. My first grandchild in 2019 in a federal medical center died through bleeding. Was having a drip, and it tissued in night. There was no help, no doctor, no nurse, and he bled until he lost over 60% of his blood. And almost going mental, he struggled and fell on the floor, was looking for water to drink, and he rolled on the floor outside, entered early morning dew, poured the dew all over his body, and then that's where they found him. By that time, he had gone into a coma. I was on my way to Port Harcourt for the 2019 rally. When they called me, I entered the 32-year-old boy. I struggled. They went to go and bring the defibrillator to attempt to revive the heart. It did not work. And I said, how long? They said it stopped working 8 years ago. I used my hand and struggled with my personal physician. I could not revive him. I had to close his eyes and put him in the mortuary. And then I proceeded to Port Harcourt for the rally. He left behind 3 children. Almost every family has suffered from what is going on in our hospitals. The doctor on duty that night had an emergency in his own private clinic, and he had to abandon the hospital to rush to go and attend to private patients in his own private clinic. So if you are coming in, you can see we can keep you here till 7, 8, because everybody here wants to ask questions, because the Senate is very concerned. Nigerians are very concerned. The same way we are feeling is the way Nigerians are feeling. And the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration must be a corrective regime. It must be a corrective administration to try to, because health is wealth. Health is wealth. There is no way a country can be wealthy when the people are not healthy. So we want to thank you for sparing your time to share your thoughts with us. You ended well by saying that a lot of things are not working, that even NAFDAC is not working, and that if given the opportunity, you get NAFDAC to work. I think on that note, you can take leave of the Senate. Thank you.
After over an hour and about 20 minutes of grueling session right there for the nominee from Lagos State, Dr. Tunji Alausa, with an extensive medical career, of course, a board-certified nephrologist, answering a lot of questions there, especially when it comes to brain drain, infant and maternal mortality, medical tourism, and of course, talking about, the primary health care centers and how they should be treated. And then, of course, ending right there with that story from the Senate President on his personal experience with negligence at the Federal Medical Center and how that affected his oldest grandchild. You're watching the ministerial screening of ministerial nominees sent to the Senate by President Bola Tinubu, and the details of the next person being screened will be coming up shortly.
Dear distinguished colleagues, the nominee before us, without saying much, just give us a short resume of yourself, and then the distinguished senators will treat you in line with the provisions of the law.
Let me begin by thanking God Almighty, who make it possible for us to be here for this screening exercise. My thanks and appreciation to the President and Commander-in-Chief, who found me worthy to be part of these ministerial nominees. Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, most distinguished Senator Godswill Akpabio, Your Excellency, the Deputy President of the Senate, Senator Barau Jibrin, Principal Officers of the 10th Senate, Your Excellency, with your permission, let me start the recognition from the senators from my state. I will start with my senator, Senator Ibrahim Hassan Angombo, Tolban Gombe is the immediate past governor of Gombe State, senator representing Gombe North Senatorial District, and Senator Tony Aro, representing Gombe South. My bosses, distinguished senators of the 10th Assembly, Your Excellency, Mr. President, with your permission, I want to recognize my colleagues, non-serving senators. I will start with Senator Bello Hayatu Gorzo, the former Chief Whip of the National Assembly, Senator Joshua Lidani, Senator Ahmed Hassan Barata, Senator Aidi Giang, Senator Alkali Jajere, Senator Jalo Zarami. Your Excellency, the member representing my federal constituency in the House of Reps is equally here, Honorable Rashid. Former members of House of Reps from my state, Honorable Binta Bello, Honorable Umar Nafada. Your Excellency, let me take us to the last part of the resume. I was a member of the 6th, 7th, and 9th Senate. When I was at the 6th Senate, I was made the Vice Chairman, Senate Committee on State and Local Government. When I returned in 2011, I was the Chairman, Senate Committee on Nigerian Air Force. In 2019, after the general election, I was made as the Chairman, Senate Committee on National Population and National Identity, and an acting Chairman, Senate Committee on Industries. Later, I was moved as the Chairman, Senate Committee on Trade and Investment. Mr. President, my very bosses, distinguished senators of the 10th Assembly, I am glad to inform you, Mr. President, among the referrals that were made to my committee, 2 upscale for presidential assent. Copyright Act Cap C28 LFN 2008 Repeal and Reenactment Bill 2021. A Financial Reporting Council Act 2021 Amendment Bill 20 SB